Hey, this is the Fit Gear Hunter here for the first ever WatchFit Games. So the CrossFit Games start this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So what I'm going to try to do is, at least around this time period every year, is give an evaluation of all the current devices on the market and how they rank, similarly to the way the CrossFit Games has a points ranking system, how the current watches and devices rank as far as function, usability, for CrossFit training, high intensity interval training, and just general cross training. So anything that uses a lot of wrist flex. Obviously, this YouTube channel and the website associated with it, fitgearhunter.com, are all about testing devices to see what functionally works best for CrossFit training, high intensity interval training, and for cross training. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically take all the primary devices that offer primary content items on the market today, and we're going to evaluate them and give it a point system. So they're going to have different areas of primary measuring and then some secondary measuring. Give it a points, see how the points tally racks up, and see who's the overall winner in different areas. So let's first take a look at the primary watches that are going to be making it into the WatchFit Games for the 2020. Okay, so the items on the leaderboard, the Garmin platform of watches, and these are only the watches that include the advanced metrics, training effect, training load, recovery time between workouts. Got the 945, the Fenix 6, 745, 245. Up next is the Coros line of watches, the Vertix, ApexPro, Apex, and Pace 2. Then you have Suunto, so 2 up top, 2 on the very bottom, the 9, the 5, the 7, the 3. You have the Amazfit Stratos 3, because that does include the first beat metrics, as well as the ability to connect to a chest strap. The Huawei GT2e, the Honor Magic Watch 2, or the GT2, they all have first beat analytics, although they don't connect to a chest strap. And then you have the Polar line of watches, the Vantage V2 that has recently been released, the Grit X, the Ignite, and the Vantage M. So let's get underway to figure out what it is we're testing. Okay, so we see all the watches that are up on the chopping block and the leaderboard for testing to see which watch is best for functional use. The primary areas, so we're going to evaluate all the watches, giving them 100 points in a stack ranking of how many points they could get based on that in primary areas, and then there's some 50-point ranking in secondary areas. So we're going to look at the winners by primary area content and the secondary area content, and then we're going to look at the winners for best bang for the buck, for number of value pieces for the cost for the watch itself. So the primary areas: workout analysis, recovery time, training load, heart rate accuracy, sleep tracking quality, recovery and wellness tracking, smartwatch functionality, and the experience with the app. The minor areas: strength, like a strength training profile, brightness, battery life, widgets or apps, notifications, the weight of the watch overall, the casing, the quality of the components of the casing, music capabilities, pulse ox, and maps. So that's just where we're starting. There's a laundry list of possible other features we could, but I just going to put these as the primary content tracking metrics. So let's take a look at who wins each individual heat and starts racking up the points. Okay, first up, the workout analysis heat. So 100 points on the table, and taking the cake, the 945, Fenix 6, and the 745. They all work out, they all do the analysis based on the load specifics, meaning did you have a high aerobic, low aerobic, or anaerobic intense level workout, and how much point accumulation did you get in the aerobic and anaerobic areas? So 3 different metrics across 2 different spectrums. You have the 245 coming in a close second, along with the Coros Vertix and the Coros family of watches. You have behind that the Suunto and Polar watches. Now the Polar only does cardio load, and the Suunto just does the training effect. So moving on, the recovery time in between workouts. You have Garmin now ranking first, because they not only calculate the amount of time you need between each workout, but you also are taking into account your body battery, your sleep, and some of the other wellness metrics into the recovery time calculation. You have Coros doing a straight recovery time, same as Suunto, and the Polar at the bottom of the spectrum, because technically they don't offer it if you're just tracking your fitness, your workouts over the watch. Next up, we have training load. Training load, obviously, I feel like the training load tracking in the Polar system is top-notch, number 1. So they are taking the cake, and then followed behind it by Garmin, then Suunto, then Coros at the end, because Coros has yet to get that right. Heart rate accuracy, I just wiped all these out because I haven't done in-depth analysis on each one of them, at least not in an analytical way. So I'm just saying who uses a chest strap and who does not. So you get 100 points if you use a chest strap, and you get a negative 100 points if you do not connect to an external chest strap. Sleep tracking, got to give the sleep tracking to the King Polar, the nightly recharge, but just specifically looking at the sleep tracking. Second comes in the Garmin 945, Fenix 6, 745, because they're getting the upper level first beat analytics, or at least they're supposed to be soon. And then behind that, everyone else. Next up, recovery and wellness. Got to give it to Garmin because the body battery is a constant all day, every minute. Heart rate variability tracking that gives you an idea of your internal resources when it takes into account your sleep and your rest cycle, or your rest state, and your workouts. Next up is the Polar, because the nightly recharge does track some higher level analytics, but only for 4 hours in the middle of your sleep at night, and then everybody else follows suit along with it. Suunto does actually have the same resources, but they're less visible on the app, so they get a less of a ranking. Smartwatch functionality. So you got to give it to the Suunto 7. It is a true smartwatch, has Wear OS built into it, and it was a great experience for that category. And outside of that, the Garmin family, the expandability, customization, apps, widgets, ability to add all those things. And then coming in last in this spectrum is the Polar line of watches. And then last, for the primary areas that we're tracking, is the app usage. I had to give it, and this is subjective, I had to give it to the Garmin family because you can dive in and see so much data under the hood, as well as I feel like they arrange their data when you're doing a workout analysis, your load analysis, they arrange it really well. Polar coming in second, but Polar doesn't get the top cake because when you look at a workout, it might have 100 specs of metrics and they're all in one big red block. They're not as visually easy to distinguish each piece apart from the others. And then everybody else comes in second, third, and fourth. Now looking at the minor areas for which you could win 50 points. The brightness, obviously the Huawei and the Suunto being, AMOLED screens are the brightest, but coming in behind that, the 945 is the second brightest of all the transflective, twice as bright as all the transflective, 4 times brighter than Coros and some of the others at the very bottom. Polar coming in last because they have yet to fix their wrist raise brightness issues. Battery life, Coros coming in first, and then I just sort of put a laundry list of people in second. Obviously, Coros should have been placed in the top part of the second category, but I didn't distinguish between the points because it's such a small differential that Coros watches are going to last longer than the Garmin watches, but at the same time, they're sort of in a similar metric. And then down to the bottom, Suunto 7 lasts 24 hours. Widgets. Garmin wins the cake. You can adjust what widgets are seen. You can see widgets in a glance. You can see widgets in full screen. You can see widgets in all different categories, and everybody else falls in second down the line. Notifications. Suunto 7 had this is a combination of did the notifications work and they appear, but also was the text size visible? Was it clear? Was it, pretty? So the 7 had the best visual readability as well as pretty, notifications. Second behind it, the Garmin family. You can read it. The text size is good. Behind that, Coros, a little bit small. Suunto, a little bit dim. And Polar, completely problematic notifications. They come in about half the time because the watch doesn't always connect to the phone and doesn't always receive them. The weight, the basic calculation for this is just who had the mid-range, so like in the 50 gram range, who is well below that, and then who was well above that. So the weight on the Pace 2, though, that is a incorrect calculation. So Pace 2 is definitely at the lightest. So some of these I didn't quite get right, but at the same time, at the very bottom of the spectrum, you have the Garmin Fenix 6, the Coros Vertix, and the Suunto 9 being the heaviest devices on the market. The casing, the quality of the casing. The Vertix has the premier casing of any kind, and then I just sort of classified. Now, the ApexPro does have a titanium piece, but the Vantage V2 does have a really pretty aluminum piece, and to me, that's just all the same, even though it's similar. So casing down to the plastic bodies at the bottom. Music capabilities. You don't have many that do this, and that's why there's a lot of 0 points on here. So you have the Garmin system where you can store and download, and even download Spotify playlists, the most possibly useful. The Suunto 7, which can control your wrist, and maybe you can download MP3s along with the Huawei Polar Vantage V2, which now you can at least forward and backtrack on the songs that are playing on your phone, but you don't actually have any storage. Pulse ox, who is functionally making it useful? So the Garmin system, they have pulse ox, but they also make it useful to enjoying or understanding some sort of primary content. All the other pulse ox in the middle and the second and third, all they do is take one-time measurements, or if you're above a certain high altitude, you can see a constant measurement, but Garmin will use the pulse ox to track your oxygen levels overnight sleep. Strength training. So Garmin has the best strength profile, meaning you can build your own workouts using a laundry list of different exercise movements. But the more important thing about the strength training aspect of the Garmin system is it will calculate training effect and training load. You will get actual workout impact, which is important to high intensity interval training as well as to CrossFit training. The second behind it was the Coro system, where you can build workouts. It's a shorter list of workouts to choose from, and it does have a heat map of how your body is affected, but it is more generic when it comes to full body movement like burpees. And it does not flow to training effect, and it does not give you workout impact or recovery time from the strength workouts themselves. Everybody else falls in last. Maps and navigation, one of the primary things that is just a neat, useful tool when you're out camping or out hiking or out kayaking. Garmin wins the cake here. Suunto 7 was pretty good, and everybody else just does sort of mild compass or mild directional things outside of that, but doesn't give you big, pretty maps. And that is it, folks. And there you have it, the individual heat winners across the board. So next up, we need to look at who won in the primary categories, the 100-point categories, the bread and butter, the most important categories. Who is the points leader for the WatchFit 2020 games? And secondly, who's the overall points leader for like all of the encompassing sort of sideline items? Maybe they don't focus or benefit training, but they are just useful and somewhat helpful tools. So a massive point spread. And then third, we're going to look at who's the best bang for the buck, like who's the best contender, or the top items, top watches you should look at if you want the best value added or cost effective watch for tracking CrossFit training or high intensity interval training or cross training. So let's take a look at who the winners are for the WatchFit Games 2020. Points leader on the leaderboard, the Garmin 945, 745, and Fenix 6. Now they're all in the same, obviously they're not the same price bracket, but they're all in the same top tier because remember the primary areas of the initial points were the workout analysis, recovery time, training load, heart rate accuracy, sleep, recovery wellness, smartwatch functionality, and the app itself. And so they are the top winners there, with a close second on the 245. The 245 falls off a little bit on the sleep calculation or some of the training load details. And then behind that, the Polar series with their expertise on the nightly recharge, but their lesser quality in some other areas. So when you look at the major points differential, and that'll be the next screen we look at, and you look at how many broad features and benefits each of them offer, we see something even a little bit more different and a more differentiation. You see the Garmin more further ahead because they have more specialty things like map capabilities, better use of pulse ox, better brightness, all of those sort of types of things that give them additional points in the overall accumulation. Behind the Garmin series, the Vantage V2 and the Vertix and ApexPro. So when you look at all of these, they all have different price points to them. So great, the 945 and the Fenix 6 at the higher price points offer the most all-around points, most all-around value. But what's the best pound for pound when you look at what it cost? And the way I calculated that was to take how many points per dollar of expense. And the winners are on that leaderboard, the Coros Pace 2, coming in at 3 points of benefit per dollar of cost, this Amazfit Stratos 3 and the Garmin 245. Now I put the Garmin in green because you have a relatively large price or point differential, which just means for that extra difference between $200 and $350, and I'm only talking about the music version, you get a pretty big jump in benefits or details because the points jump is pretty large. So those top three I would consider are great and resourceful for tracking your workouts, tracking your load, tracking your recovery time, tracking your wellness and sleep, as well as baseline functions with app and backlight and notifications. in a relatively reasonable price point. So those are the top 3 winners and the top 3 overall, the Garmin family. For now, let's go into the summary. And there you have it, folks. The winner for the WatchFit Games 2020 is the Garmin 945, tying similarly with the 745 and the Fenix 6 and the 245. So the Garmin family operating the primary content. The winner for this, the overall point, and also to get a sense of the point spread, meaning number of features and benefits that maybe aren't directly correlated or aligned with training, but just other neat features and benefits. Garmin is now taking the cake again in the points, in the all-around points winner with a considerable spread. And then looking at the best bang for the buck, the overall, what might be considered the top 3 choices for a budget-friendly, more cost, valuable watch for CrossFit or high-intensity interval training. And it comes down to the top 3, the Coros Pace 2, which is an incredibly valuable watch for the cost, the Amazfit Stratos 3, and the Garmin 245. So those are the 3 winners right now from a points evaluation. Now, I still lean towards the 245 because the Coros Pace 2, while it has load tracking, the load tracking isn't great, and it lacks sleep tracking, and it lacks wellness tracking. The Stratos 3 is great, but it lacks some of those components, the quality of sleep tracking as well. But the Garmin 245 still sort of at the top end because you can play music, and it does have body battery, which is heart rate variability tracking all day long. So it's still sort of the go-to watch at that price range. But Coros Pace 2, Amazfit Stratos 3, offering incredible value for the overall amount of points they've accumulated. So that's the WatchFit Games 2020. Stay tuned for next year and for more reviews to come. I got the 945 or 745 test evaluation coming up next, and then the final evaluation of the Garmin Elevate heart rate sensor, the most recent sensor across a number of workouts to see how they really stack up just on the heart rate sensor alone. So this is the Fit Gear Hunter. Thanks so much for watching.